Hi everyone, I'm Jada Burt and this is In My Tracks. You know that feeling when a song comes on and it's so good that it feels like you're frozen in time? Well, that's what this podcast is all about, the songs that stopped me in my tracks. I chat with musicians about their process, challenges, and inspiration. And you discover your new favorite songs. This week on In My Tracks, we're talking to Thomas Bowles, an indie rock artist based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to In My Tracks. I'm your host, Jada Burt, and today I'm speaking with Thomas Bowles. Hi there, how are you?
Doing good. How are you doing today?
Great, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Of course.
So I'd love to know, just like go from the beginning, when did your love of music begin?
It's a great question. I feel like I've always wanted to have a story for that. That's like, I was singing from a young age and I, played guitar since I was 6, but I always was drawn to music. Like I was always interested in um, basically any sort of medium that music came through. I grew up in the church, which I found is a lot of people that are in the music industry. Like it's a really similar story. We all grew up playing in church. And I was the guy that was always like reading through the hymnals and waiting for those parts of the things and then just kind of like drowning out the rest. And I remember my great grandmother was living with us for a little while, and I would always go into her room and like sing songs that I liked on the radio, whether it was like a cool new pop song or I grew up in the South, so there was a lot of country, but she used to always make fun of me because I would click my teeth while I was singing, and she'd be like, "Why are you clicking your teeth?" And I would always say, "Well, those are the drums." So I did that. And then when I was a little bit older, I went to a Christian private school, and like the coolest people in a Christian private school are definitely the musicians because they're the ones that are always on stage playing music. And I didn't really have like a thing. Like I wasn't super athletic. I wasn't, the funny guy or the social one. So I always looked at the musicians and I was like, man, I wish I could do that. And so I kind of just, as like a 13-year-old kid, decided to make it my life mission to be a musician. And so I started playing guitar, and then I realized, and this is maybe a shallow thing, but like I said, I was 13. I realized the guitar players weren't the coolest people on the stage. So I realized that the guitar players weren't the coolest people on stage. And so I was like, man, like if I could be a singer, that would be pretty cool. And so I did a lot of practicing and horrible singing in, the back rooms of school or in my room when I got home. I definitely spent a lot of time singing instead of doing my homework or anything that I was supposed to be doing at the time. And then I played at a school talent show, and everybody was just like, "Who are you?" And yeah, it kind of just developed from there. So
Yeah, hearing that you got started in the church like so many musicians, starting from there, what's your relationship with that now, as that was your, stomping ground in the beginning where you kind of sounds like where you kind of found your love for music and being a part of that?
yeah, I mean, maybe you've heard this before, but I would say my relationship is complicated now. I think like when you're a kid, there's a lot of wonder to it, and um, you're you're just connected with this thing. Like you go to church, that's just what you do. Your family takes you to church. For me, like I was involved in youth group. Like I was the guy that went to church like 5 times a week, not just the once. Um, and so it definitely is like an integral part of who I am today. Even um, I'm still involved in a local church, and I would say that I still retain my faith. I guess like when you're a kid, you look at faith as like a duty or something that you're supposed to do. It's just like school, like um, you go to school every weekday and you go to church on the weekend. And um, I think when I got older, I went through this process of trying to figure out how to make that my own instead of like, I guess, living in somebody else's belief system. And so, yeah, I would say like many, my relationship with church is complicated, but uh, I still love the things that made me who I am, and I still retain the faith that I grew up with. So
Yeah, yeah, I'm happy to hear that you still have your faith and have found, um, a new way, as an adult to practice. It is hard to explain in words, honestly. So at
yeah,
times, what piqued my interest as well was, that talent show. I want to know how that kind of changed you, having that experience, being on stage, and then, that response of like, who are you? How did you take that experience and then go home and say, okay, well, I'm going to keep doing this and I'm going to keep writing music and I'm going to like perform 1,000 times if I can. What,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I mean, people do it for all different reasons. I think I maybe when I was a teenager, I kind of put my identity around it too much. Like I was, from then on, like I played local shows. I was in a high school band that wasn't so great, and um, I kind of just fell in love with the concept of uh, maybe just like me doing something and people responding to it, like whether it was people responding like super excited and joyful, or whether people had criticisms or critiques. Either way, it's like I felt like people noticed me. And I grew up homeschooled, so I wasn't used to that. So all of that was fresh and new, and it created um, almost. I mean, the best way I can describe it is it was almost like a high. It was like a drug that you just keep chasing, because every time you do this thing, people notice and people listen. And so, yeah, I think that it took me a long time to actually fall in love with the music itself, which might be a strange order of doing things. But um, like I said, yeah, it wasn't until I was a little bit older before I started to fall in love with the music. So,
Yeah, that is really interesting, way of dealing with this craft. I've never quite heard it put that way, but it sounds like that high you were describing is kind of like being seen in a way. So, how do you kind of balance those feelings where yes, you would like to be seen and, you get that high from performing and balancing that with these are my songs, this is my music, and this is like what I want to say. Do you still kind of feel like the need and like the desire to be seen, not necessarily in the same way, of course, as a teenager, but kind of in a similar way?
I think it became for me, especially in high school, where I mean, we've all been there. We've all been in high school where you're trying to figure out what makes you important. I don't think in high school that's how we would explain it to people. I think in high school, you're just trying to get through to the next thing. But for me, it was people would be like, "Oh yeah, he's the guy that plays guitar. Oh yeah, he's the guy that sings that song that people talk about." And um, I had to get to a point. It was definitely a little after high school, but I had to get to a point where I had to realize that music was something I did. It wasn't me, And um, I think that the longer I was able to have that mindset, and the longer I was able to process that who I was maybe amplified by these songs and by the things that I was able to do, I was then able to even write better music because my relationship with it was healthy. Um, I have a lot of friends who are in the industry, and I had a conversation with one of my good friends the other day, and he was talking about this idea that music is, this almost this personified thing that you have a relationship with. And if your relationship with your music is healthy, then the music you write is great. And if the relationship you have with it is unhealthy, then it almost impedes the things that you're trying to build with the thing itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally does. Yeah, you described it in a perfect way where it was like your identity was musician. I make music. I am
Yeah.
music. Like I am
Yes.
music. And now it's like I make music. It's something that I do. That makes a lot of sense to me because it sounds like it's kind of easy to drown
Yeah.
when it's just everything, it's you.
Hmm.
And yeah, it sounds like you're in a healthy place now.
Yeah. I even think back to when I first started like making my own music, as far as like recording, putting it out there, like performing under my own name. Because I did spend after high school, I did spend a good amount of time of my early 20s singing in church. And so you're singing other people's songs for the most part. And so when I did decide that I was going to like move on and do my own music, I remember the guy that was helping me like make my merch for the first time. He showed me this really cool design that he had made for it. And it had like some of my lyrics and then it had my name at the bottom. And I remember saying, "This is so cool. I love it. But does my name have to be on it?" Because like I realized that I had a hard time tying like it had almost the pendulum had almost swung the entirely opposite direction where instead of being like I am Thomas Bowles, I am musician, it became I had such a hard time putting my name next to it and being like it felt more like okay, like I would rather these songs stand on their own and not have to associate with them personally, which I've also since gotten through. So
No, that is difficult. That is tough. It's going back to that like feeling of being seen. You're really seen when it's your government name like on a t-shirt, right?
yeah.
Um but what did it take for you to actually get to that point where you're kind of back to where you were before as a teenager but in a healthier place where you're like, yeah, these are my songs and I can own them and these are my lyrics and yeah, my name's right there.
Yeah. I think it was putting like a really honest record out a few years ago. Like I started recording in 2020 with a producer named John Class, and he's brilliant and wonderful. And um, I wasn't even sure when I walked into that studio what the songs were going to sound like. I mean, I had written them on an acoustic guitar in my bedroom, and those four walls heard them way more than anyone else, you know? And so walking in, I was like, is this going to be like rock? Is it going to be sad boy? Is it going to be country? Is it going to be folk? I just don't know. Because I hadn't necessarily spaced out in my head what it looked like to build a song completely. I had just been like, here's the guitar, here's the vocal, and that's the song. And so after, I think it took us like 3 weeks to really put those songs together. And after a while, I started to hear this like unique sonic fingerprint that was my music, like that was what Thomas Bowles sounded like. And obviously that can evolve and that can grow and that can change. But in that moment, it's almost like I had like a stamp of identity that I could carry with me and something that I could then hold and say, this is at the very least a part of who I am. Once I was able to do that, then I was like, okay, like I'm now branding myself, which is a whole different beast, I guess, especially in like the social media world, the TikTok world. You have like people who are just funny, trying to brand themselves, and you have people that do silly food challenges that are trying to brand themselves. And we live in a society that definitely focuses on like I'm trying to put my best foot forward, whatever that is. And so I think once I was able to do that, once I was able to say, okay, this is who I am and this is what I sound like, I was then able to find it in myself to, I guess, share that with the world. So
Yeah, absolutely. That is definitely a journey. Glad you made it through that because yeah, it takes a lot to actually figure out what your sound is going to be and be confident in
yeah,
it and ready to release it. But I'd like to go back to, branding since my goodness, it is a huge part of being a musician and artist today. How do you balance the fact that your songs are really honest and not always like happy go lucky? Because, I mean, they really can't be in order to be
right.
good. How do you balance that with, like you said, the kind of need and expectation to always put your best self forward online in order to gain new followers or gain new, I'd rather say, gain new listeners and
Yeah.
retain the listeners that you have.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, I would say maybe that's current when it comes to things to wrestle through, like, um, you're trying to create honestly. Like I'm the type of person that, I mean, I advertise myself as like an indie rock singer songwriter, like all the different like names or subgenres you could put it under. But I think at its core, like writing wise, it's definitely singer songwriter, which has a tendency of being a more honest genre. And um, so when I sit down to write songs, I'm not like, oh, what's the like trendiest, funnest, coolest, most interesting thing I can say right now? I have to like dig and say like, oh, like what is the thing that I went through that's not so great, or what are the aspects of myself that I'm truly wrestling with, like, and so I think that that is challenging. I mean, there's times even now where like I'll sit in my room and like let's say I had a hard situation happen and I'm thinking about it and I'm trying to write about it. And then I'm thinking about people involved in it. And I'm thinking about, oh, well, if they heard it, are they going to think, ah, man, that was a knock at me? Or, oh, is this like you're trying to like make sure that you're being truthful and honest, but you're also trying to like, it's this weird thing of trying not to offend people, and, um, so yeah, I think that that is a very difficult thing because in the end, like artists are just people who create, and there's nothing else special about us. Like, um, and so there's nothing that makes us like above going through a breakup or going through depression or going through, um, list just about anything you can think of, and artists go through those things, and then we try to like implement those very personal situations into a medium that people can be entertained by. And it feels kind of twisted when you think about it, but um, it's also really cool. And it's definitely cathartic in its own way, being able to express yourself in a way that a lot of people either can't or just choose not to. And um, so yeah, it's a fine line, that's for sure. And I think on social media, like, to expound on the question a little bit more, like you're definitely like trying to put the highlights out there. You're trying to be the person that you think other people want you to be. And then there's always somebody else out there who's doing it way better. Like you're never going to go on social media and be like, I am the best at social media. So I think for me, it's like, I just want to like be truthful and be honest with the expression. I mean, even a lot of artists like will say like, "Oh, don't post your personal life on your social media," but like, I kind of want a little bit of both. I don't want to be the guy that just posts when a new song's coming out, and so I think having that honest expression and having the ability to just say, "Hey, this is who I am," whether it's good, bad, or ugly. Um, yeah, I think that's the best path to go. So I guess the best the best way to cap that off is it's pending. It's we're all working on it. I mean, I have artist friends that are way, way ahead of me, and listeners or followers or whatever number you want to put. And like, they'll tell me all the time, they're like, yeah, like, I don't know what I'm doing either. Like, it's not this thing where like anybody really has it together. So I think we're all just doing our best.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really all you can do. But, you brought up a good point about, being in your space where you're ready to write a song or start working on a project, and, you know, the desire not to offend those you know can come up pretty quickly. How do you
Yeah.
make sure that you're being honest in your work while you also have to be concerned about someone possibly listening to the song, reading the lyrics, and thinking that something is about them and then becoming offended? That's a whole thing that we've seen
Yeah,
over
it
and over
truly
again.
is. Yeah. I mean, I've always said like I'll never write a diss track. Like
Hmm.
I never want to like permanently put something out there that would ever like truly hurt someone.
Yeah.
I think diss tracks are cool and they're awesome and everybody listens to them and thinks like, yeah, like heck this dude.
Hmm.
But um I think ultimately like I've always wanted my music to be a space where people can relate and maybe sometimes commiserate, but not at the expense of others. And I think the thing that can get challenging sometimes in that exact same space is like we do live in a world right now, and maybe we always have. It's just amplified by that famous social media we've been talking about. That like people get very offended very easily. Like people are very like passionate about whatever it is they feel like is right or true or what they believe, which I think is great in its own right. I think sometimes the world could stand to listen to each other a little more. But I think because of that, like that's another thing that I think about when I'm writing. It's like I don't want like, that guy that goes to my church that's super opinionated to hear my song and be like, well, can you explain to me why you would say this when this is the truth? Or I don't want somebody who maybe has gone through the exact same experience to um, hear it and be like, oh man, like it's kind of insensitive that you would say that about someone going through this. And so I think a lot of those things in my own head are probably self-imposed. It's not situations that would actually occur. Um, but they're situations that I have to fight to think positively about when I'm in that writing process. So
Yeah, absolutely. Because that I feel like the list could just go on and on of the scenarios, but I totally understand, because the internet is permanent, and
yes,
strong.
it is.
But yeah, but hopefully you get to a place where you're able to write and then look at what you've written and not have to go through all of that.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, we talked a lot about you getting started with playing guitar, and then moving on, and then wanting to be the singer, frontman, and writing your own songs. What would you
Yeah.
say is your favorite part of the music making process?
Probably, and I maybe this is like not true, but I feel like this is not what a lot of artists that I've talked to have said. For me, it's actually like the collaborative part of it, like getting to sit in a room with other people and like turn whatever it is you've created into something more. Like I said, that first time that I brought songs from, the bedroom editions into the studio editions was, it was just a wild process because I had dreamt the song as far as I could dream it. And so I needed other people to come alongside it and say, okay, this is actually how far it can go. And every single time that I've put myself out there and shared, hey, this is what I'm working on with other people, they always take it so much further than I could I could have ever imagined. And so yeah, it's that process. It's the I think my favorite part of it is sharing it with close friends and people who also work in music, and just watching them add their own creative touch to it. I think a lot of artists think they have to be closed-handed. I think there are some artists that are closed-handed and do a phenomenal job with it. Um, but I've just seen that there's true power in being open-handed with creativity and allowing other people in the process. So yeah, it's the people I get to work with. That's the that's the best part.
Yeah, collaboration is everything. I feel like I just learned that in recent years.
Yeah,
Yeah, there can be so many people in a room, but every person was needed for, the song that we hear today and love so much. Um,
yeah.
so I would like to know though, how do you know that the person that you're either inviting in to work on a song or just inviting to listen to the song early is the right person for the song?
Yeah, I'd say it's just the trust you build when working with certain people. Like I mentioned John earlier, he's the producer that's I've been working with for a few years now, and like we when we sit down in a room to create, it's not just great creatively, it's also great personally. Like we always have great jokes, we have great laughter, and we have good conversations that are, deep and profound and impactful. And so I think like you kind of know people, you know their experiences at least as much as they've shared with you. And you know that the thing that you are creating would relate to certain things, or you also know that the flip side of that, like people know you and people know your situations and what you've been going through, and maybe they know what the song is about and what you wrote it about, and they can even speak to like, hey, like I'm proud of you for writing about this or sharing this. And I think the last thing with that question is just like most of the people that I share with are artists themselves, and um, just getting to see their, I guess, what they get to give to it based on their sound and their style and their writing and their ability, knowing that, like, let's say, like, and this is not a real name, but like, I know that if I show this song to Paul and Paul says it's good, then it's probably good, you know?
Yeah, it's always nice to have, as many ears as you as you can on a song, but also like ears that
Yeah.
can provide, value and constructive criticism or even like action on songs that you might not have, done on your own. I think that's incredible. Going back to again your journey to be where you are now in your music career, how would you say that your love of music has changed since you decided to pursue it professionally?
It's a great question.
Thank you.
I mean, I think, oh man, I'm trying to think of how to answer this question well. Um, I think when I started, there was a lot more wonder to it than there is now. And that may sound like a negative off the bat, but it's honestly more of a maturation. Like it's changed. It's sort of like, think about, when you're first in a relationship, it's super exciting and you're, going through all of those, like first time I said I love you, first kiss, first date, first, movie night, first whatever, like you're experiencing all these firsts, and they're grand and they're big and they're unknown and they're a mystery. And then, the longer the relationship goes on, you get more complacent. It's harder to, sometimes maybe go out of your way to do those things, or rather, it requires more effort. Like you have to put the work in. You have to be intentional. And I think like it's kind of the same thing with music where that latter stage may not feel as exciting, but it is deeper and it's more important than maybe some of those more, clickbait, exciting things that happen at first. So when I started playing music on my own, like under my own name, there was probably a lot more of this, like, whoa, I get to do this. This is incredible. Like shouting it from the rooftops. And now it's more like, I would say it's more genuine. It's like I get to look in like more introspectively and say, I get to do this and truly mean it and be proud of it. And um, so, yeah, I think my love of music has changed because it used to be about, as I stated earlier, like what I thought I could give to other people. And now I think it's become more of something that I can give to myself and hope and pray that it's something that other people get something out of. So when I started talking earlier about how music was something that people responded to, like I sang songs, people responded, it started to become this thing that I associated with just something that I did. And now music is something that amplifies everything that I do, um, in the way that it's not just something that I'm doing to get a response from other people. It's something that I'm doing because I have things to say, I have art to create, I have songs to sing. And I hope that people do have a response, but I guess I'm no longer dependent on people having a response to continue creating.
Yeah, that's the place to be. So now you're really only looking forward. It's not the chattering and all that. So
Right.
that's another way, working towards getting your mind clear. Yeah, I love to hear that. So I would love to know if you could choose the first song that a new listener heard, which one would it be?
Hmm.
Yep, it's a tough.
Yeah, that's a hard one
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, I would say all of my songs have a different feel, um, and you never know where you're going to meet. Like, you never know where the song is going to find someone. But I would say the song that I probably most often share with people is a song I wrote called Waves, and it's on my first EP. And it's honestly, it's super ethereal. It's really out there. I took some like inspiration from Noah Gunderson and M83 and just kind of those like super moody artists. But I would say it just kind of showcases the type of music I make. So
All right, awesome. Listen to Waves. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the conversation with Thomas Bowles so far. This is the song that stopped me in my tracks. Here's Tired by Thomas Bowles.
in my hand, but losing 3 moves in. Living to another end of the world before my day even begins. And I know that life is more than just love or sin, but I can't take you seriously because you're not letting anyone in. I never thought peace would be the sign to find. Tell me, think on whatever's lovely, but I'm losing my mind. Always getting so close, but never quite close enough. I'm falling apart, 'cause I'm trying, but I'm still feeling rough. And it's such a shame that we've got only time to be young while we're still young. Lately I'm tired, I'm tired, I'm tired, I'm tired, I'm tired. Oh, I'm tired, I'm tired, I'm tired, I'm tired, I'm tired. I never thought that peace would be the sign to find. Tell me, think on whatever's lovely, but I'm losing my mind.
So I picked your song Tired. This song really, I mean, it really stood out to me, and I was like, okay, I need to know more about this song. I loved the lyrics, loved the production on it as well. So I'd love to know what inspired you to write this song.
That's a great question. So Tired was a song that I wrote, I think I wrote it 2 years ago, probably almost exactly 2 years ago. And I had gone down to Nashville to visit friends, and I was actually talking about what it was going to look like to create my next project. And um, I was even considering moving to Nashville because I had a great deal of friends who were moving down there. And I got there, I was excited. I think I was in one of those states where I just needed to get out of town for a bit, like clear my head, take a couple days off work, and just hang with friends, have some fun. So I was optimistic going into the trip, and I get there and I'm kind of like taking everything in, like I said, like thinking like, can I live here? Would I thrive here? Would I enjoy it? And when I got there, I started hanging out with some friends, and one of the things, like the topics that came up over dinner was like, yeah, don't move to Nashville, man. Like this city will eat your soul. Like that's what they said. And they weren't even directing it at me. So I sort of felt like I knew something they didn't. And that it was one of those things where it's like, it discouraged me. It made me kind of sad. And I came home from that trip feeling like, I guess, more tired, more exhausted than I did going into it. And so I got home and I started to realize that whenever somebody asked me like, how are you doing today? I would always say, I'm tired, but I'm fine, or something like that. Like, and maybe that's a common story. Like people get busy and people are like, how are you doing? You're just like, I'm tired. And so, like I said, I was starting to answer the question, how are you doing, with I'm tired more than anything else. And so I started to write the song and try to explore the things in my life at the time that were kind of causing that feeling or that fatigue or that answer.
So what did you have to discover while you were like going through kind of making this list of things that made you tired, things that, made you fatigued in life?
Yeah, I think it was realizing that it wasn't physical exhaustion. I feel like I was in a season of my life that it was emotional exhaustion, it was spiritual exhaustion. I was feeling like maybe I didn't know what my place was. I didn't know who I was supposed to be. In the pre-chorus of the song, the pre-chorus is, I never thought that peace would be this hard to find. You tell me think on whatever's lovely, but I'm losing my mind. And um, I was living with some friends at the time, and they would always talk about the Bible verse that says, think about whatever is good, whatever is true, whatever is lovely, whatever is praiseworthy. And I was in a season at the time where I was struggling with mental illness, I was struggling with depression, and I believe all of those things to be true. I believe it's great to think about those things and to focus on those things and to meditate on those things. But I think like it's sort of like when, you fall and you hurt your leg and somebody's like, walk it off. It might be good for you to do. And the thing that they're saying might be true. But when you're told those things in that moment, you just kind of get angry and frustrated. And so I think there was kind of a nod to that in this song that's like, it's almost like a full acceptance of I'm not in a good place, and acknowledging within yourself that you're not in a good place, but also for better or for worse, kind of coming to terms and making peace with, but I'm really mad about it.
Yeah, that was a lot to chew on. How do you manage in these situations since, you never know when they're going to come up? How do you manage your, interpersonal relationships where, yes, you're being told things that are true? How do you manage that anger,
Right.
that dissatisfaction, that just overall feeling that just is like, oh, okay, like I need more than this. I need more than this. This is all true. I believe it wholeheartedly, but I'm like going through something right now.
Yeah. I think if I was maybe 5 years younger, I would probably have said, like, oh, I just tell them to stop talking,
Uh-huh.
But I think now I'm in a place where, and this is a challenge. I mean, I think it's really challenging. Anytime you have to challenge yourself, whether you're wrong or right or whatever, I think it's a very difficult thing for people to do. It's very difficult for me to do. I don't like admitting when I'm wrong or when I'm, uh, in a space that isn't ideal for me to be correct. If that
Yeah.
made sense, and so when somebody tells you something you already know, or like to be true, but it's almost the like, well, that doesn't really help me right now.
Hmm.
That's like the instinct that you feel. And I don't know if this is helpful or if this is just a me thing, but I think for me, it's like remembering that the things that people are saying, if they are talking from the Bible specifically, or if they're talking about a specific like psychological therapeutic thing that does work and that does help you when you're in those spaces, like remembering that the things that they're saying are actually more true than the things that I'm feeling,
Yeah.
because the things I'm feeling are temporary. They're not the things I'm going to feel in an hour, and they're not the things I'm going to feel in a day. Something that my dad has told me for a very long time is, especially when I was going through hard things, is he would always look at me and say, remember what's true. Don't think about what you feel about it, your emotions, your strong like feelings towards it in the moment. And it's obviously you should process your emotions. And that's not what he's suggesting, but remembering the things that are factual, that are good, that are that you can actually hold on to keeps you grounded, and it keeps you in a space that um, helps you to overcome instead of sinking the ship and getting hopeless.
Yeah, remembering what is true, that is something I have also been told many a time by my parents as well, and it can be tough when it's not exactly what I want to hear, but it's so true. It's like, yeah, the verses in the Bible are not going to change. They're not going to change,
Right.
and they're just true. There's no debating that. And I think that while you've been hearing it throughout your childhood and adult life, you're putting it into practice, and it sounds like you're in a better place now than you were when you released this song.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I always say that songs are photographs to
Hmm.
whatever you are feeling in the moment. They're not, you know, it's not like I can release a song and then just be like, this is a, um, my name is Thomas Bowles and I approve this message.
Yeah,
Like
right.
I'm not gonna put my stamp on everything I've ever said, you know,
Hmm.
but songs are whatever I felt in that moment. And, I don't fully relate to the songs that I've put out anymore, but I also relate to them in new ways, you know?
Yeah,
So
totally. That's growth. Yeah, I love hearing this backstory of where the song like initially came from. But what did the process of bringing it to life entail?
yeah, so I wrote that song, like I said, almost 2 years ago exactly. And I wrote that song and then I wrote the other two songs that are on that same EP as Tired. And I talked to John and I just said, "Hey, like let's record these songs." And so it was the first week of December of 2021. We were gonna try to record before like the holiday swing started to happen. So John was basically like, "We have 3 days to do this. So like we probably won't finish it." And I had this thing where I was like, "No, we're gonna finish it." And I was like, 3 songs in 3 days, we can do it, right? And so we had a team of like 20 people in the room, like who were like, there was like 5 guitar players and only one drummer because he did a phenomenal job. And but like every single instrument had like multiple people working on it at the same time. And um so for this song, it was fun because we just got into the studio and um, I played the little demo I had on my phone, which was just me and a guitar, and I was trying to decide whether or not I wanted it to be that, whether I wanted it to be like a more chill, laid back, just me and an acoustic, or if I wanted it to be like a bigger, more um, upbeat song. I would say it's kind of like a song that's got like a medium build to it. It's not um, a huge song, and it's also not a soft song, but we got into the studio and we always track drums first, and so we got that done. And then the next day we actually got a really cool opportunity to go record in a studio that was in somebody's house, and they had this entire like guitar room set up. And so um, my friend Avery and Miguel and Nick, they were, taking the guitars off the walls and they were trying to find the right sounds for it. And I think we were there for like 10 or 11 hours that day, just tracking away. And it's always fun because you have this, like you get to a point where you have this vision in your head of what the song is going to sound like. And the more people you put in the room, the more that changes, I would say. Um, and there was a point where this song almost had like the most country twang to it, which could probably be hard to picture if you've heard the final product. But my buddy Nick started playing this riff, and I just looked at him, and I just remember looking at him and saying, "Absolutely not! Like we're not going that direction." And I have nothing against country music. I kind of grew up on it, but um, I've never cared for it in my own music, and so it becomes that, and it becomes you have ideas that you think are great, and you have ideas that you don't care for, and it can be interesting because sometimes there's even ideas you think are great that don't make it into the final because it may work there, but it doesn't work over here. And so yeah, I mean the process was a lot of collaboration. It was a lot of putting your ears on it over and over again and trying to make it into whatever you want it to be. And I think what people probably don't fully know is that the post production actually takes way longer than the actual studio time because you're sitting there going back and forth. Like me and John would have this thing where like he'll send me an email with the current mix, and then I'll send him a list of notes, and then he'll send me another mix, and then I'll send him a list of notes, and it kind of goes back and forth until both of us feel like the song is done. And so for this song, there were times where had less guitar in it. There was times where it had no synth in it. There was times where it didn't have piano in it, and um, so all of those instruments and all of those ideas kind of get added all throughout the process. Whether it's when you're in the studio, whether it's after, where you're like, actually, I want to go back and do this. But
Yeah, cheers to collaboration. Another way of proving how valuable it is. That's incredible to have so many people involved in, making this song. I was like, how have I never heard this song before? I'm so mad. It's awesome. So
that's great. Thank you.
yeah, of course. So something that kind of got my attention was, while you're going through this process, you have some ideas that you really like, but they don't make the final version. How do you deal with that? Do those become ideas that are kind of in the save for later thing because it's like, okay, well, I really want to do this. It didn't work for this song, but I would love to use it for something else. Yeah, how do you deal with that, like emotionally, and then actually in practice?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes ideas feel like quickly hardening cement, and it's almost like you have to put them into place before they harden. Otherwise, they just kind of stay in your brain as this is what this song is and this is what it sounds like. Um, whether that's the way you sing it, the way you play it, like whether it's I go up on this note instead of down on this note, and it just becomes ingrained into what the song is. And eventually you start to realize, at least I started to realize, a song can change at any point. It doesn't have to sound a certain way, it doesn't have to look a certain way. Obviously, there are staples and there's a foundation and there's something that makes the song what it is, like its DNA, but everything else about it can change. And there are ideas that I've had for songs, whether it's, I've always wanted to do a song that's just organ, like, and that's probably my church roots, but I just think it's a really cool idea. I've heard it done in other indie artists and I think it's really cool. And there was a song I wanted to do it on in the studio where I was like, oh, what if we just did this? But ultimately the other ideas that were presented were more conducive to the song, even though the idea still would have been cool and it still would have provided, an awesome song to come into the world. You kind of have to wrestle with whether or not the idea that you are attached to is like for the best, I guess. And maybe sometimes you get that wrong as an artist. I'm sure sometimes we get that wrong. But deciding, is this the idea for this song? Is this going to propel this song as far forward as another method or another medium or another instrument? So yeah, I'll tell one story about this process. There's a song I wrote called Scars, and it's on my first EP. When we were writing the song or when we were putting it together in the studio, we actually spent an entire 13-hour day on this song because when we started it, I was like, man, I really want this song to be driven by the acoustic guitar. And so we put down the acoustic and we put down the vocals and we were trying to add all these different elements, but there was something about it that just wasn't working. And so I looked at John and I just said, hey, like, what if we take out the acoustic? And he was like, no, that's not it. We'll keep going. And then later on, John was like, oh man, what if we do take out the acoustic? And I was like, no, you're right. It's a staple part of the song. It has to stay. And then it was like probably 6 hours into this process that I looked at John and I was just like, I think we should take out the acoustic. And so we finally took the acoustic guitar out and then decided we were going to make it more piano driven. And it just, all of a sudden the song was done. It just came together and that was the thing. And so it's like, instead of getting so attached to your ideas and, holding it so closely, being able to say, no, like whatever has to change in order to get that song to be what it needs to be is what it is. So
That's something to actually put in practice, being less attached. That's a lot to think about. stuff that I myself can totally put into practice. So, yeah, thank you for sharing all of that.
And of course,
And thinking more about this song, I'd love to know how you feel when you listen to it now that you've had, a couple years since releasing it.
yeah, I think for this song, it's one of those, like, I love playing the song live. It's always so much fun. I think the guys love playing this one. It's just one of those kind of deceptive songs that feels happy, but it's not. And I think when I listen to this song specifically, it's a song that makes me happy because I get to look back on where I was when I wrote it. And then I get to look where I am now. And even when I do sing it on stage now, like, I sing it from a different perspective than I used to. And I sing it from a perspective of knowing that somebody else, whether they're in that room, whether there's someone who listens to it on Spotify, probably feels that way at that moment. Um, and hopefully being able to be like a living testament that you get out of it. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a song full of memories. It's a song full of, even the memories of collaboration and making it memories of the times when I was sitting alone in my room, frustrated and tired. And so, yeah, I think for me, it's a in memoriam to where I used to be. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So,
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And, you're also at this place where you can think about it being a comfort to other people, which I think is powerful as well. One of the best things about music. So, in closing, if you could speak to your younger self who was just starting his career in music, what would you say?
probably don't take yourself so seriously. Um, I think I wanted to do it so right and so well that there were times where I didn't allow myself to have creative expression over the things that I was doing. And so I would just say, have fun with it, enjoy what you do, enjoy the fact that you get to make songs and that other people care that you make songs. Like, I mean, whether you have, 60 listeners or 60,000 listeners, like, it's such an honor that people care about your art. And so I think I would just encourage my younger self to have fun, smile more, be happy, and yeah, just not take yourself so seriously.
Yeah, those are all things that make the process just that much easier because you can't control everything. So, yeah, those
Yeah.
are wonderful words to give. And then what are you excited to promote? I know that you said you've been working on music.
Yes. So I don't have, at least I'm not ready to promote what's next. I will say that I'm going to be um, creating something in December that I think people will be excited to hear. Going to be writing with some of my favorite artists, and I think that the end result is going to be very cool, very personal, and hopefully just as emotional and moving as what I've created in the past, if not more so. And so stay tuned.
Yeah, that is super exciting. And then where can people find you on the great internet?
On the great internet, you
Yep.
can find me on Instagram at underscore Thomas Bowles underscore. You can find me on Spotify as just Thomas Bowles, and just about anywhere music is streamed or sold under that name. Um, and then TikTok, you can also find me at underscore Thomas Bowles underscore. I'm working on getting a little bit more active on there, so hopefully you can expect some entertaining and engaging content.
Yes. Feed the algorithm.
Feed
You're
the
right.
algorithm; it's
Yep.
very hungry.
Yep, exactly. Well, that is incredible. You know what to do. Stream his music, go to his shows, and stay tuned for the music that is coming. Thank you so much, Thomas, for being on. It was so wonderful having this conversation. Had no idea where it would go, but I'm so excited about, all the topics that we discussed. So yeah, thank you again.
Yes, thank you, Jada.
Thank you for listening to In My Tracks. The show was created and produced by me, your host and friend, Jada Burt. And shout out to Play Audio Agency for recording, editing, and producing the show, and for composing the original theme music you are currently jamming out to. Please rate, review, and follow In My Tracks everywhere you listen, including Spotify, where I curate playlists that pair with each episode. Did you hear a song that stopped you in your tracks? Share it with me. DM me on Instagram at InMyTracksPod, because music is meant to be shared. See you next time.